On the evening of May 30th, 2012, 19-year-old Brittany Wood left her mother's home in Mobile, Alabama, between 7 o'clock and 7:30 p.m. Her family assumed she was visiting a friend, but her true destination was her uncle, Donnie Holland's home. What began as a seemingly ordinary visit would soon plunge her family and law enforcement into a nightmarish ordeal. Just 2 days later, on June 1st, 2012, police made a grim discovery. Donnie Holland was found deceased in his car, with a fatal gunshot wound to the back of his head. The unsettling crime scene raised immediate questions. Was Brittany involved in Donnie's death, or was she a victim herself, abducted by his killer? Brittany, who had dreams of becoming a hairdresser and opening her own salon, became a mother to her daughter, Peyton, in 2009. Though she and Peyton's father, Andy Woods, later separated, they maintained an amicable co-parenting relationship. Brittany found joy in her family, especially her brother Derek, whom she considered her protector. Her childhood was marked by her parents' divorce, but she maintained a positive relationship with her father, Wallace Hankins. However, a deeper, more troubling dynamic existed with her uncle Donnie. Donnie Holland, outwardly appearing friendly and charismatic, hid a darker side. At the time of his death, he was under investigation for his alleged involvement in a widespread child abuse ring that disturbingly included other family members, even within Brittany's own household. The question loomed: was there a connection between this hidden past, Donnie's death, and Brittany's disappearance? On May 30th, 2012, after Brittany left her home, her family's attempts to contact her later that night were unsuccessful. Accustomed to her spending days with friends, they initially weren't alarmed. However, this was no ordinary night. 2 days later, on June 1st, 2012, Donnie Holland was found deceased in his car, still running, in a secluded area overlooking the Fish River. He had been shot behind the ear. Upon learning the devastating news, Brittany's family again tried to reach her to share the information, but her phone was unresponsive. Unable to locate Brittany at her usual haunts, her family grew increasingly concerned and promptly filed a missing person report with the Mobile County Police. At the crime scene, police located a small gun and a phone battery inside Donnie's car. Brittany's mother, Chessie Wood, mentioned that bags had been placed on Donnie's hands at the hospital, presumably for gunshot residue testing, but it remained unclear why these bags were later removed without testing. Police also interviewed Donnie's wife, Wendy Holland, and their friend Jennifer Gonzalez Moore, who discovered Donnie's body. They reported that Donnie was still alive, gurgling blood, when found. A surprising detail emerged when Brittany's best friend, Tiffany Bailey, identified the gun found in Donnie's car as belonging to Brittany, stating Brittany had purchased it for protection shortly before her disappearance. This discovery fueled suspicions, leading to questions about the involvement of Wendy and her friend, or even Brittany herself. Another perspective soon came to light. At the time of his death, Donnie was scheduled to meet with investigators about his alleged involvement in the child abuse ring just 30 minutes later. Former Detective Eric Veberg of the Baldwin County Sheriff's Office believed Donnie likely anticipated arrest and took his own life. The investigation scrutinized phone records. The battery found in Donnie's car belonged to Brittany's phone, and call records confirmed Donnie and Brittany met on May 30th, 2012. Records showed Donnie picked up Brittany in Mobile and drove her to a residence in the Styx River area. Brittany's text messages ceased abruptly at 11:30 p.m. on May 30th, with her phone's signal last pinging in Mobile in the early hours of May 31st. A widespread search for Brittany ensued, involving volunteers, search and rescue units, helicopters, dogs, and boats covering a 5-mile radius around the Styx River Basin. Despite extensive efforts and numerous interviews, no trace of Brittany was found. Amidst the failed search for Brittany, attention shifted back to Wendy Holland. Police noted that on the day Donnie's body was discovered, Wendy was observed deleting items from Donnie's phone. However, DNA results from the car were inconclusive, and the case reached a standstill. Ultimately, Donnie Holland's death was officially ruled a suicide. This ruling sparked controversy. Private investigator Becca Johnson and firearms expert Cameron Bowie expressed skepticism, citing the lack of gunshot residue testing on Donnie's hands and the unusual position of the gunshot wound. Despite these concerns, no concrete evidence emerged to challenge the suicide conclusion for Donnie's death. Though Donnie's case concluded as a suicide, the broader investigation into the child abuse allegations continued, exposing a deeply disturbing history within the family. It was confirmed that Donnie Holland had orchestrated a child abuse ring involving at least 11 other family members or friends who had been abusing and exploiting children, including their own, for decades. Brittany's Facebook messages further implicated the family, showing communications with one alleged victim that referenced abuse. Donnie's wife, Winnie Holland, and Brittany's brother, Derek Wood, were among the 11 family members arrested for their involvement in the abuse ring. Brittany's mother, Chessie Wood, also faced child abuse charges, though she maintained her innocence. Friends of Brittany revealed that she herself had been a victim of Donnie's abuse starting at age 9 and intended to confront him and expose him to authorities. While the hypothesis that Brittany might have killed Donnie out of revenge was considered due to her intentions and the gun being found, no definitive evidence supported this theory, preventing further investigation into her direct involvement. Another possibility explored was that a past victim of the abuse ring killed Donnie out of revenge and subsequently abducted Brittany, though the motive for kidnapping Brittany remained unclear. Over the next few years, multiple family members were convicted. In December 2014, a young victim testified against Winnie Holland, detailing years of abuse. Brittany's brother, Derek Wood, pleaded guilty to charges, receiving youthful offender status and spending 3 years incarcerated. Dustin Kent, Winnie Holland's brother-in-law, also pleaded guilty to sexual abuse charges involving two 13-year-old family members, receiving a 17-year prison sentence in 2018. Randall Scott Wood, another uncle, also pleaded guilty. Winnie's twin sister, Minnie Kent, was convicted of sodomy and child abuse in 2015, sentenced to 40 years. In 2015, Winnie Holland herself was convicted of child abuse and child torture, receiving a staggering sentence of 219 years in prison. Brittany's mother, Chessie Wood, admitted guilt to a misdemeanor charge of child endangerment. Ultimately, justice prevailed for the many victims of this troubled family's decades-long concealment of horrific activities. However, the exact circumstances surrounding Donnie Holland's death remain controversial, and the crucial question of what happened to Brittany Wood, the person who could tell the whole story, remains unanswered. More than a decade has passed, and Brittany remains missing, her whereabouts unknown.
Hey, this is Tony from the Cold Case Project, where we focus on unsolved cases across the United States. Our mission is to bring attention to these unresolved mysteries that need your help. All the information we cover in these cases is readily available on the internet, but we rewrite and repurpose it for the purpose of these videos. Our goal is to spread the word about the thousands of unsolved cold cases still out there. Thank you for watching. If you want to help shed light on these cases, make sure to like and subscribe for more content. Your support can make a difference.
The quiet routine of Montgomery, Alabama, was irrevocably disrupted on April 1, 2000, when Judy Wilding vanished. She was last seen at her home on Arrowhead Drive between 4 o'clock and 4:15 p.m., a seemingly ordinary afternoon that would soon become the focal point of a chilling investigation. The next morning, April 2nd, Judy's van was discovered abandoned at 9 a.m. behind the Ani Mall, a pet store she owned on Vaughn Road. Judy herself was nowhere to be found. Her husband, Albert Leonard Wilding, offered an initial explanation. Judy had simply packed a few belongings and left him without warning. He depicted their marriage as fraught with difficulties, a claim somewhat supported by her pet store employees who had observed their frequent arguments and the fact that they maintained separate bedrooms. Albert specifically mentioned that Judy had taken family photos, credit cards, her driver's license, and her wedding rings, implying a definitive departure. However, investigators quickly found inconsistencies that undermined Albert's narrative. Judy's driver's license and credit cards were unexpectedly located in her bedroom, contradicting his assertion that she had taken them. Furthermore, her engagement and wedding rings were later found in a bank's safe deposit box that Albert had accessed after Judy's disappearance. These early discrepancies immediately raised red flags about Albert's truthfulness. For over 8 years, Judy's whereabouts remained a haunting enigma, with suspicions steadily mounting against her husband. In August 2008, Albert Wilding was formally charged with her murder. Authorities theorized that his primary motivation was financial gain. It was revealed that Judy's pet store was struggling financially, and she had reportedly informed Albert of her intention to divorce him after their approximately 2-decade marriage. The financial motive became even more pronounced with the discovery that Albert had collected a substantial $815,000 from 4 life insurance policies on Judy in 2004, after successfully having her legally declared deceased. Disturbingly, he had continued to pay approximately $30,000 in premiums on these policies after her disappearance, all while maintaining his ignorance of her fate. Such actions were highly suspicious, as Judy, if alive, could have easily canceled or cashed in the policies herself. The investigation also unearthed a shocking and violent chapter from Albert Wilding's past. This was not his first time facing homicide charges. In 1970, in Kentucky, he had confessed to the murder of his mother-in-law, whom he had brutally beaten, choked, and stabbed to death in her home. At the time, authorities alleged the motive was to acquire her life insurance money. He was initially sentenced to 21 years for voluntary manslaughter, but astonishingly, his sentence was commuted by the state governor, leading to his release after serving a mere 1 year. In February 2011, nearly 11 years after Judy vanished, Albert Wilding's murder trial was poised to begin. Yet, moments before the proceedings commenced, he entered a guilty plea to manslaughter in connection with Judy's death. In his confession, Albert provided his version of events. He claimed he returned home to find Judy in her bedroom, actively packing to leave him. An argument escalated into a physical confrontation, during which he stated a gun went off accidentally, resulting in Judy's death. He then admitted to keeping her body in the bathroom for a day before attempting to burn it. The remaining human remains, he claimed, were subsequently scattered in various locations in and around Lake Martin. For this admission, Albert Wilding received a sentence of 5 years in prison, followed by 5 years of supervised release. This was a significantly lighter punishment than the life in prison without parole he could have faced for the original capital murder charge. He was scheduled for release in mid-2013, but his story concluded tragically when he died in prison in March 2012. Despite Albert Wilding's conviction and subsequent death, Judy Wilding's body has never been recovered. The lingering mystery surrounding her final resting place, coupled with the disturbing revelations about her husband's violent past, continues to underscore the strong suspicion of foul play in her case. On April 28, 1982, Christina Zane was last seen at her apartment in Mobile, Alabama. The 20-year-old Kmart clerk was reported missing the following day after she failed to show up for work, and she has never been heard from since. Her abandoned car was discovered on Todd Acres Road at Rattlesnake Bayou, wrecked with her purse and other personal belongings still inside, just a day after she disappeared. The initial lead in Christina's disappearance came from Robert Stephen Gilchrist, who voluntarily went to the police on May 11, 1982. Gilchrist claimed he had met Christina at a bar and accompanied her home on the night of her disappearance. He further stated that a few days later, Christina came to his apartment and engaged in a sex orgy with him and his male roommate, after which he never saw her again. The case took a dramatic turn in July 1982 when Dorinda Henderson, Gilchrist's on-again, off-again girlfriend, contacted the police. At the time, Gilchrist was serving a 30-day jail term for an unrelated assault. Henderson told detectives that between May 11th and early June, Gilchrist had confessed to her on multiple occasions about killing Christina. He allegedly described beating Zane to death with a stick, wrapping her body in a sheet, and burying it in a swampy, wooded area. According to Henderson, Gilchrist claimed he committed the murder because Christina was threatening to expose their group's sexual encounter and make trouble for him. Based on Henderson's testimony, Gilchrist was charged with capital murder on July 15th. Following his arrest, he provided 4 additional statements to the police regarding Christina's disappearance. During his trial, Dorinda Henderson testified about Gilchrist's alleged confessions. However, Gilchrist offered a different version of events, claiming he was present when Christina died, but was not the killer. He asserted that Henderson, in a fit of jealous rage, had discovered him with Christina and shot Christina to death. Despite his claims, Robert Stephen Gilchrist was convicted of Christina Zane's murder in September 1982. This conviction was later overturned on appeal, but he was convicted a second time in 1989 and sentenced to life in prison. Christina Zane's body has never been located. Authorities believe her remains may be buried in a swampy area near Todd Acres Road and Cooeyman Road in Mobile County. Lori Ann Slasinski was born in September 1981 to Arlene and Casimir Casey Slasinski, completing their family after the birth of their son, Paul. The Slasinskis resided in New York until Lori was 13, when they embarked on a significant move to a rural area outside Montgomery, Alabama. Lori was an exceptional student, graduating at the top of her high school class in 1999. She then pursued higher education at Auburn University, about an hour and a half from her family home. To facilitate her studies, Casey and Arlene purchased a small house for Lori in a well-maintained community, offering her the independence of off-campus living while still being surrounded by other students. In 2004, Lori graduated with honors, earning a degree in psychology with a minor in criminal justice. She secured a job as a mental health technician at the East Alabama Mental Health Center in Auburn. According to her MySpace profile, Lori wasn't entirely content with her job despite working alongside her best friend, Lindsay. She felt it wasn't leading her where she desired. She also expressed a wish to find a long-term, serious relationship, though her dating experiences had so far only yielded friendships. Nonetheless, Lori maintained an active social life, enjoying the outdoors through biking, walking her dog Peanut, and trips to the beach. The events leading to Lori's disappearance began on Thursday, June 8, 2006, when she spoke to her mother, Arlene, on the phone. Their calls, while regular, were no longer daily, a habit established after Lori had initially asked for more space during her college years. The following day, Friday, Lori opted out of attending a concert with a friend, instead making plans for a low-key Saturday evening. She was going to Lindsay's house to watch a movie and have a few drinks. Around 6:30 p.m. on Saturday, Lori called Lindsay to say she was heading to Walmart to pick up mixers for their drinks and would be over soon. At approximately 7 p.m., Lori called Lindsay again. However, when Lindsay answered on the second ring, there was no one on the other end, seemingly an accidental dial. Lindsay waited, but Lori never arrived. Attempts to call Lori back went unanswered. Lindsay, recalling hearing Lori's friend Rick in the background during their 6:30 p.m. call, tried to reach him, but he also didn't answer. Lindsay went to bed, assuming something significant had come up, as Lori was not one to miss plans without an update. Sunday morning brought no news from Lori. Lindsay continued calling her house, leaving messages with no reply. On Monday morning, Lori failed to show up for work, escalating Lindsay's concern. She began reaching out to friends and coworkers. Lindsay texted Rick Ennis, Lori's friend who had been with her on Saturday, expressing her worry. Rick replied that he hadn't seen Lori since Saturday either, and, while slightly concerned, thought she was probably fine. On Tuesday, Lori's continued absence from work prompted her boss to contact her parents. Arlene, not having heard from Lori in days, immediately drove to Auburn. In the meantime, Lindsay and another co-worker went to Lori's house. They found Lori's car missing and no answer at the door. They entered the house, finding the front door unlocked, unusual for Lori. Inside, Lori's Yorkie, Peanut, was in his crate. Lindsay released him, noting the crate was clean and Peanut seemed well, dispelling initial fears that he had been confined for 3 days without food or water. However, other details raised alarms. The air conditioning was running full blast, which was odd as Lori typically turned it down when not home. More strikingly, Lori's 3 small throw rugs, which she kept in the kitchen to protect Peanut from the linoleum tile, were missing. Her outside trash can was also gone, and the answering machine was unplugged, suggesting someone had tampered with it after messages had been left. With these mounting concerns, Arlene contacted the police and reported Lori missing. Given that Auburn was a college town where young adults occasionally lost contact with family, Arlene and Lindsay felt the police initially didn't treat Lori's disappearance with the urgency they believed it warranted. They emphasized that Lori had been out of contact since Saturday, and it was now Tuesday, well past the typical 24 or 48-hour waiting period. The same afternoon Lori was reported missing, Arlene received a call from Rick Ennis. Rick told Arlene that when he last saw Lori, she was leaving to make a drug deal, implying she was the seller. This story immediately struck Arlene as suspicious. She didn't believe Lori was involved in drug sales and questioned Rick's motive for fabricating such a tale. Lindsay later confirmed that while Lori had grown weed for personal use, she didn't have an operation large enough to sell. When police interviewed Rick, he repeated the same story, leading authorities to search Lori's home, where they found nothing to support the drug dealing claim. Despite initial police skepticism, Lori's missing person case quickly evolved into a potential homicide investigation within 24 hours of her being reported missing. This shift was triggered by the discovery of her car at 4:41 a.m., the day after she was reported missing. It was found engulfed in flames at the end of a cul-de-sac near a construction site. A search of the car and the surrounding area yielded no signs of Lori, and there were no witnesses to the fire. Later that day, police formally interviewed Rick Ennis and searched his car. Officers noted Rick was wearing long sleeves in June, Alabama, and upon inspection, found scratches on his hands and arms, which they photographed. Inside his car, they discovered cleaning supplies, including Clorox spray, bathroom cleaner, a scrub brush, and air fresheners. A full examination of Lori's home revealed fresh scuff marks on the walls, consistent with someone struggling and kicking their legs. The coiled cord from Lori's landline phone was also missing, a type of item that could be used for binding. These findings led investigators to believe Lori had been attacked in her home. The timeline was crucial. Lori last spoke to Lindsay at 6:30 p.m. and said she was going to Walmart. Security footage from Walmart confirmed Lori did visit the store. However, she never arrived at Lindsay's house. Her computer showed no social media activity since Saturday. This suggested she went missing between Walmart and Lindsay's, or that she returned home after Walmart and was assaulted there. The state of Peanut, who was fine despite being left in his crate, further complicated the timeline. If Lori was truly gone since Saturday, Peanut should have been in distress. This led to the theory that someone was caring for Peanut, someone who knew Lori was missing and cared about the dog's well-being, not a random killer. The timing of the car being torched also pointed to someone close to Lori. Her car wasn't set on fire until after she was reported missing, but before the news broke to the wider public. This indicated that the perpetrator knew the police were actively investigating, and only Lori's friends, family, and co-workers would have had this information. Investigators focused on those closest to Lori, and Rick Ennis, 25, became a prime suspect. He was the last person known to have seen her alive, and his drug deal story was disbelieved. The scratches on his arms and the cleaning supplies in his car raised further suspicion. Moreover, police had critical information from Rick's past that was withheld from the media. When Rick was 12 years old, he had killed his mother, Dolly Flowers, 41, and stepfather, Eddie Joe Flowers, 40. Born Daryl Richard Ennis, he had a tumultuous childhood, moving frequently with his mother. In 1992, Dolly remarried Eddie, who actively tried to bond with Rick. However, Rick remained withdrawn. In December 1992, another move forced Rick to change middle schools again, his third school that year. On March 5, 1993, at 1 a.m., a patrol officer found Rick, then 12, walking along the highway after crashing a car. In his backpack, the officer found loose ammunition, a large kitchen knife, and a .38 caliber gun. When asked about his parents, Rick emotionlessly stated, "I killed them both." Police found Dolly and Eddie dead in their bedroom. Dolly had been shot with a .22 caliber gun and beaten with a baseball bat. Eddie had been shot with a 12-gauge shotgun. Rick confessed, claiming he snapped during an argument with his mother about the impending move, shooting her, and then waiting for Eddie to return home. However, police found a to-do list in Rick's handwriting that included killing Eddie's daughters, suggesting premeditation. Rick also faced charges for 2 burglaries, stealing the .38 and shoplifting cigarettes and baseball caps. Rick's attorney argued that his actions stemmed from years of mental and physical abuse, though Dolly's family has not corroborated these claims. Rick pleaded guilty in juvenile court on June 22, 1993, and was sentenced to juvenile detention until he turned 21, the stiffest penalty allowed for someone under 14. He was released in 2002. Lori was unaware of Rick's full past. He had moved to Auburn and kept his history hidden. Lori, feeling sympathy for his apparent lack of family, invited him to spend Christmas with her family in 2005. They found him friendly and polite. Authorities, however, were well aware of his violent past and found additional evidence linking him to Lori's disappearance. A letter from Rick to Lori, found in her home, indicated he was interested in a relationship with her, which both his and Lori's friends confirmed she had rejected. Investigators also noted that Lori's car was found burning near the bowling alley where Rick worked. Rick's co-worker, Jeremy, told police about a suspicious interaction. The night before Lori went missing, Friday, June 9, 2006, Rick called Jeremy, claiming he ran out of gas and asking for some. When Jeremy brought it, Rick wanted to keep the gas can, which Jeremy refused. Jeremy found it odd that Rick wanted to keep the can, and also noted that Rick's car started immediately after adding gas, suggesting he hadn't truly run out. After Lori was reported missing, Jeremy noticed one of the 3 gas cans from the bowling alley was missing. Police found a gas can near the car fire consistent with the missing one. Investigators meticulously kept this information from the media, and Rick Ennis's name did not appear in any public articles, despite him being the primary suspect. Arlene, however, praised the police for keeping her well informed. The lead investigator maintained that they owed it to the family to maintain that connection. In the first week of the investigation, Rick was interviewed 3 times. Shortly after his 3rd interview, he moved 3.5 hours away to Huntsville, Alabama. Evidence was sent to the lab, but the lead investigator retired before results returned, and the case was shuffled, eventually going cold. Hope briefly surged in 2007 when human remains were found in Pittsview, an hour south of Auburn, but authorities quickly dispelled any connection to Lori, identifying them as likely belonging to a missing local man. Without Lori's body, and therefore direct evidence of her death, prosecuting a no-body homicide case is challenging, though statistics show they can be successful once they reach trial. Peanut, Lori's dog, went to live with her parents. Within a year, Lori's case was no longer actively worked on. Tips, however, continued to trickle in. In 2009, Rick's roommate in Huntsville, Abram, found a piece of mail addressed to Daryl Ennis, which was Rick's full name, previously unknown to Abram. Upon Googling the name, Abram discovered Rick's past involving his parents' murders. Alarmed, he then researched Lori's case, which Rick had vaguely mentioned, claiming he had been in love with a woman named Lori who disappeared. The totality of what Abram learned terrified him. He called Rick, telling him to move out, and spent the night at his girlfriend's house. The next day, with a police escort, Abram returned to their apartment to find it trashed, with smashed items, missing belongings, and the oven on with a glass containing liquid and a wick, suggesting an attempt to start a fire or explosion. Rick had left behind some belongings, including rugs he claimed Lori had gifted him. When shown to Lori's friends, they identified them as the missing kitchen rugs she used for Peanut. These rugs were placed into evidence storage. Lori's case briefly re-entered the news in March 2008 when another Auburn woman, Lauren Burke, was carjacked and murdered by Courtney Locker. Locker forced Lauren into her car, drove around, ordered her to undress, and shot her when she attempted to escape. He then set her car on fire to destroy evidence. The similarities in car burning led the public to suspect a connection to Lori's case. However, police quickly dispelled this, citing their confidential information, such as the care given to Lori's dog and their belief that Lori was attacked in her home, which didn't align with the carjacking. The shared method of car torching was attributed to both assailants' knowledge that fire destroys evidence. The case saw no significant movement until 2016 when the Alabama State Bureau of Investigation established a cold case unit and selected Lori's case as their first. 10 years had passed. Investigators began re-interviewing witnesses and following up on neglected leads. Crucially, they discovered evidence that had never been sent to the lab, including the scrub brush from Rick's car and the rugs from Abram. Most shockingly, they uncovered a sealed envelope containing lab results on various swabs from Lori's home and her bed sheets. The report, which took 9 months to process due to backlog, had been filed away after the initial case agent retired, untouched for a decade. These results revealed Rick's DNA in Lori's home, not just touch DNA or saliva. Rick's blood was found on the inside handle of the front door, and his semen was found on Lori's bed sheets. New tests on the scrub brush from Rick's car confirmed the presence of human blood, though a profile couldn't be obtained. The rugs from Abram also had Rick's blood on them, further linking him to Lori's belongings, although the blood could have transferred at any time while the rugs were in his possession. After a year and a half of intensive reinvestigation, including re-interviews, retesting evidence, and following up on previously dropped leads, authorities were ready to arrest Rick Ennis for the murder of Lori Slasinski. They located him in Virginia, where he was living with his new fiancée, having divorced his previous wife in South Carolina. On August 6, 2018, Rick was arrested at his workplace, where he designed and built yurts. He waived extradition and was sent back to Alabama to stand trial. News of Rick's arrest prompted a man named Terry to call the police. Terry, who had worked with Rick in South Carolina, received an article about the arrest from a mutual friend. Terry recounted a conversation from 2009 in a sports bar, where he asked Rick why he moved from Alabama. Rick's startling reply was that he strangled who he wanted to have a relationship with but who had turned him down. Rick didn't name her, but referred to her as a white piece of trailer park trash, a significant detail, as the home Lori's parents bought for her was a mobile home in a trailer park. This new witness, combined with the substantial DNA evidence and the circumstances of the case, bolstered the prosecution's position against Rick Ennis. Ennis went to trial for Lori Slasinski's murder. Despite Lori's body never being found, prosecutors built a compelling case based on the extensive circumstantial evidence gathered by the cold case unit. During the trial, prosecutors argued that Rick Ennis was obsessed with Lori and killed her when she rejected his romantic advances. They presented the evidence of his DNA, including blood on her front door handle and semen on her bed sheets, the missing phone cord, and the missing rugs found in his possession. They also highlighted the scratches on his arms, which they contended were sustained during a struggle with Lori, and the cleaning supplies found in his car. The testimony from Terry, Rick's former coworker, regarding Rick's admission of strangling a white piece of trailer park trash, who rejected him, further strengthened the prosecution's narrative, especially given Lori's mobile home residence. Rick Ennis, testifying in his own defense, maintained his innocence. He claimed that he and Lori had consensual sex and that he last saw her when she left to meet a drug dealer, reiterating the same story he initially gave to police years prior. He attributed the scratches on his arms to his dog and suggested that investigators might have planted the cigarette with his DNA found near Lori's burned car. His defense attorney also criticized the cold case investigation, suggesting it was solely focused on Rick rather than a broader search for the truth. After 2 days of deliberation, on April 14, 2022, the jury found Daryl Richard Ennis guilty of capital murder in the 2006 slaying of Lori and Slasinski. He was subsequently sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Lori's mother, Arlene Slasinski, stated that she did not wish to pursue the death penalty due to the lengthy appeals process it would entail, preferring that Ennis be locked away for life. Despite the conviction, Lori and Slasinski's remains have never been recovered. The Alabama Bureau of Investigation continues to accept tips regarding the location of Lori's remains. Pensacola, Florida, a city known for its stunning beaches and the vibrant pulse of the Gulf Coast. But in May of 2003, for one family, Pensacola became a place of agonizing uncertainty, a silence that stretched into years, punctuated by unanswered questions and a chilling mystery. This is the story of Marcus Virgin. On May 8, 2003, Marcus Virgin, then 24 years old, embarked on what seemed like a routine trip from Pensacola to Mobile, Alabama. He wasn't alone. 3 acquaintances accompanied him. The purpose of their journey that day, as later revealed, was to purchase lean, a street term for. If you really want to know, Google search it. As evening descended, Marcus made a call to his uncle, a simple conversation where he stated he would be home shortly. A promise, a casual reassurance, that would tragically go unfulfilled. Marcus Virgin never arrived, and from that moment on, he was never heard from again. His companions that day, the very individuals who had last seen him, claimed they dropped him off near the railroad tracks behind his grandmother's Pensacola home upon their return. But his bewildered relatives, waiting anxiously, never saw him. The silence from Marcus was immediate, absolute, and deeply concerning to those who knew him best. At the time of his disappearance, Marcus Virgin was, in fact, wanted by both state and federal law enforcement. The charges against him were varied: drug-related offenses, habitual criminal traffic violations, resisting arrest, and, notably, failure to pay child support. Given this background, investigators initially leaned toward a rather pragmatic, if disheartening, theory. Marcus, they believed, had simply gone into hiding to evade arrest. It was a plausible explanation, one that might make sense to an outsider looking at his rap sheet. However, those closest to Marcus vehemently disagreed. His family and his girlfriend insisted, with heartfelt certainty, that it was entirely uncharacteristic for him to vanish without contact for more than a few days. Regardless of his legal troubles, Marcus maintained strong ties to his loved ones. This unyielding silence, this total absence, felt fundamentally wrong. It didn't fit the man they knew. For years, the case stagnated, shrouded in speculation. The white noise of his outstanding warrants often overshadowed the growing unease among his family. Then, in 2007, a significant break, albeit a fragmented one, finally emerged. Authorities located the very car Marcus Virgin had been inside on the day he disappeared. It was a crucial piece of the puzzle, a silent witness to whatever had transpired. And inside, in the trunk, investigators made a chilling discovery: a small sample of blood. It was a tantalizing, horrifying clue, but at the time, the technology was limited. They were unable to test it for DNA, leaving the vital question of its origin unanswered, the silent story it held unheard. The case of Marcus Virgin, now more than a decade old, continued to haunt investigators. The blood sample, a ghost of a clue, remained. Then, in 2019, with the relentless march of forensic science, a new opportunity arose. Authorities resubmitted the blood evidence for testing. The advancements in DNA technology, unimaginable years before, finally cracked open the silent truth contained within that tiny, dried sample. The results were clear, undeniable. And suddenly, after 16 years, the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. They had a case. In May 2020, years after Marcus Virgin vanished, Florida authorities delivered a profound shockwave to the community. they formally charged David Lashdale with first-degree murder in Virgin's case. The arrest of Dale, a man who had seemingly gone free for so long, sent ripples of both relief and horror. But Dale's arrest was just the beginning. During questioning, he admitted to taking part in the murder. More crucially, he didn't act alone. Dale named another individual, Keishon Isby, as the person who had supplied both the gun and the vehicle used in the horrific crime. A month later, Isby was also arrested and charged in homicide. Photos of both men, David Lashdale and Keishon Isby, now circulated with Marcus Virgin's case summary, tangible faces connected to the unspeakable act. It was confirmed that Isby, Dale, and another man, Tristan Fairley, were the last people Marcus Virgin was seen with. As the investigation unfolded, authorities came to believe that Tristan Fairley was tragically unaware of the murder plot, simply an unwitting witness to a crime he could not have anticipated. The details of the confession were harrowing. In 2008, years before his formal arrest, David Lashdale had actually admitted to police that he had planned to kill Marcus Virgin and that Isby had shown him the gun that would be used. The confession painted a grim picture of the final moments of Marcus Virgin's life. Dale recounted how the vehicle stopped on the side of the road, and everyone got out except himself. Then he heard a shot. A moment later, he saw Marcus Virgin running, desperately fleeing, with Isby chasing after him and Fairley following behind. Dale chillingly described how it appeared the gun had jammed, and Isby, in a fit of rage, continued to beat Marcus Virgin with the gun until it broke into pieces. While Dale had also implicated Fairley in the murder during this earlier confession, authorities, armed with later evidence, concluded that it was Dale who actively participated in the fatal assault, rather than Fairley. The wheels of justice, though slow, eventually ground forward. In May 2023, David Lashdale took a plea deal in Marcus Virgin's case. He pleaded no contest to manslaughter, a significant reduction from the initial first-degree murder charge, in exchange for a 12-year sentence. A measure of accountability, but for a family still reeling from loss, perhaps not full justice. As of the current date, Keishon Isby is still awaiting trial, the legal proceedings continuing to unfold. The Escambia County, Florida police continue to investigate Marcus Virgin's case. His last known address was in the 5200 block of Charbar Drive, a home he never returned to. Marcus Virgin was a father to 4 children who grew up without their dad. Caught in the crossfire of a violent drug-related dispute, foul play is suspected in his case. On the evening of January 21, 2017, Ayanna Smith, 23, was last seen at 10 p.m. on West Brunson Street in Enterprise, Alabama. She has not been heard from since. That same night, residents of her apartment complex reported hearing a gunshot in the parking lot. Later, her boyfriend, Malcolm Theodes Hunter, was seen alone, driving her car at a bank ATM. When police located Smith's car, they found her cell phone and wallet inside. More concerningly, a significant amount of blood was present in the passenger compartment. An anonymous tip led investigators to a silver handgun, registered to Ayanna Smith, discarded in a vacant lot on West Adams Street and Warren Road. A separate tip then guided authorities to Hunter's blood-stained clothes and shoes. Hunter was arrested and charged with Smith's murder on February 2nd. Initially, he denied any knowledge of her whereabouts. However, during his third police interrogation, his story changed dramatically. He claimed his aunt had shot Smith in the chest during an argument at the aunt's apartment, then drove away with Smith and returned without her. Investigators searched the aunt's apartment but found no evidence consistent with a shooting having occurred there. In the spring of 2018, Malcolm Hunter was tried for Ayanna Smith's murder. During the trial, forensic evidence confirmed that the blood found in Smith's car belonged to her. A witness testified to seeing Hunter with what appeared to be the lifeless body of a woman in his car. Another witness stated that Hunter had asked him for assistance in disposing of a handgun. After only 45 minutes of deliberation, the jury found Hunter guilty. Due to his 4 prior felony convictions, He was sentenced to the maximum penalty under the Habitual Felony Offender Act. Life in prison without the possibility of parole. Ayanna Smith's body has never been found. She left behind 2 young children. Due to the compelling circumstantial evidence and the disturbing details of the case, foul play is strongly suspected. On May 12, 1986, 26-year-old Wanda Jean Mays disappeared from Guntersville, Alabama, leaving behind a perplexing mystery. While nothing in her life suggested foul play, 2 past incidents provided a potential clue. 3 years earlier, severe dieting had triggered anxiety attacks, marked by overwhelming fear and a desire to escape. This led investigators to consider 2 primary theories: a possible panic-induced flight or a more sinister crime. The evening before her disappearance, May 11th, Wanda had dinner with her parents, Jim and Dot, near Lake Guntersville. Her father, Jim, recalled her being her usual cheerful self, laughing and talking. As he walked her to her car, he sensed she had something to say, but she only told him she loved him before leaving. At 8 p.m., on her way home, she stopped at her aunt and uncle, Betty and Ty Dorman's house. They persuaded her to spend the night. At 5 a.m. on May 12th, Betty tried to wake Wanda, but received no response from her locked room. Ty Dorman then attempted to open the door without success. Their grandson, John, helped kick the door open, revealing Wanda's absence. The room was found in disarray, and a window was broken. Looking back, Ty Dorman felt a missed signal in Wanda agreeing to stay over, as she rarely did. The Dormans were unaware of her recent dieting and later felt guilt for not recognizing potential anxiety symptoms. After discovering the chaotic scene in Wanda's room, Ty rushed to the nearby lake. There, on the dock, he found her torn and bloodied nightgown. Fearing she had fallen into the water, he immediately contacted authorities. The Alabama State Rescue Squad was called to drag the lake, but their search yielded no clues or a body. Jim and Dot Mays, Wanda's parents, spent the day waiting for news. Dot, an experienced swimmer, found it hard to believe her daughter would have drowned. Hours later, the rescue squad located a canoe that 2 fishermen had spotted earlier that morning. Towed to shore, the canoe contained several traces of blood. This discovery intensified Jim's fears, leading him to believe Wanda was injured and desperately needed help. At 10 a.m., homicide investigators were brought into the case, with Detective Ed Teal taking charge. Upon arrival, Detective Teal and his team examined the canoe, taking blood samples that were later confirmed to match Wanda's blood type. Detective Teal described the case as the most baffling of his career, citing the unprecedented nature of a complete disappearance. Inside Wanda's room, Detective Teal observed that the bed had been turned back, but it appeared no one had slept in it. Her clothes lay on a chair, and her purse, identification, checkbook, rings, and watch were neatly placed on the nightstand. The broken window, specifically 2 panes of glass, was found to have been broken from the inside. Peculiarly, no one in the house reported hearing the sound of breaking glass or rattling blinds. Wanda's case was fraught with unsettling ambiguities. How could everyone in the house have slept through the sound of breaking glass? If foul play was involved, why was the window broken from the inside? Why would she leave her nightgown on the dock in the middle of the night? If an anxiety attack occurred, what triggered it? And why were there bloodstains in the canoe? Did she cut herself on the broken window, or was she attacked? Detective Teal theorized that Wanda may have exited the canoe and reached land. The canoe had previously been sighted just a few yards from the lake's bank. He and members of the Alabama State National Guard searched a nearby campground, but found no trace of her. Detective Teal speculated that if she came ashore wet and partially clothed, she might have taken clothes from a nearby clothesline. Further potential evidence suggested Wanda might still be alive. At 10 a.m. on the day of her disappearance, a neighbor reported seeing a tall, young woman walking down Route 62, a few blocks from Lake Guntersville. Her hair appeared wet, as if she had just been swimming, and she was wearing oversized, baggy jeans. A day later, at a convenience store 30 miles away in Huntsville, Alabama. Another witness observed a woman resembling Wanda sitting in a car with two men. The witness recalled the sighting due to the woman's visibly frightened demeanor and the rough-looking appearance of the man, noting that the woman seemed out of place and appeared to be trying to get her attention. 10 minutes later, the witness had a second, prolonged look at the woman, who was using a payphone just feet away. The witness remained convinced it was Wanda. Wanda's family held on to the belief that she was still alive and continued their search, determined to uncover what happened to her. Lake Guntersville police also believed there was a strong possibility she was alive and potentially held captive. The case, which had been profiled on Unsolved Mysteries, finally found resolution years later. In October 2003, skeletal remains were discovered in a wooded area below a 150-foot cliff off Chalaki Road in Guntersville, less than 2 miles from the Dorman home. In January 2008, DNA testing confirmed the remains belonged to Wanda Jean Mays. Authorities concluded that there was no foul play involved, ruling her death an accident. They believed that due to her chemical imbalance, Wanda suffered another panic attack sometime after midnight on May 12, 1986. They theorized that after breaking through the bedroom window, she ran off, crossed the lake in the canoe, and subsequently fell from the cliff to her death. Wanda's family has accepted this tragic ruling. Sadly, Betty and Ty Dorman passed away before learning of Wanda's fate. Her mother passed away in 2017, and her father, Jim, passed away in 2018. What do you think happened to Wanda? Comment down below with your thoughts on this and the other cases featured tonight, and don't forget to check out the playlist in the corner for more video. Thanks for watching.